Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer and tackle the absolute biggest trap builders face when scaling AI products. Look, if you're building with AI right now, you are inevitably going to hit a massive wall if you don't map out your infrastructure correctly. Today, we're talking all about choosing your AI access mode, whether that's first-party APIs, inference providers, or self-hosted models. And more importantly, we're going to talk about treating that choice not as some one-and-done deal, but as a deliberate product lifecycle strategy.
See, there's this really dangerous misconception floating around the builder community right now. People treat AI model selection as a static, one-time choice. Most builders pick an access mode at the very start of a project and literally never look back. And hey, that works perfectly at week one, but it breaks, predictably, as the product matures. The costs cross over, regulatory environments shift, and capabilities diverge.
Which brings us to the ultimate question we're solving today. How do we actually build the operational discipline to anticipate scale instead of just reacting to it? Because let me tell you, having to do an emergency migration at the exact moment your team has the least bandwidth is a total nightmare. This discipline isn't about magically predicting the perfect access mode on day one. It's entirely about preparation.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The month 18 trap, 2. Early stage, need for speed, 3. Growth stage, the hybrid approach, 4. Mature stage, multi-mode routing, 5. The 4 migration triggers, and 6. Architecting for cheap migrations. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Early stage, need for speed.
Let's start the clock and look at the very first phase of your product's journey. As you can see, the infrastructure demands of a week 1 prototype are just worlds apart from a year 3 enterprise deployment. The shape of your architecture needs to start out super simple and then grow in sophistication over time. Think about it. At week 1, you honestly don't even fully know what the product is yet. Your users are going to surprise you, and features will be added or scrapped on a daily basis.
Because of that, at week 1, speed is literally the only thing that matters. Just stick to one first-party provider, like Anthropic, OpenAI, or Google. Why? Well, because your volume is genuinely way too low to worry about optimization. The cost of your engineering time to set up some elaborate, multi-provider routing vastly exceeds any savings you'd get on a $50 monthly API bill. Just pick the SDK that fits your stack best and focus 100% of your energy on iterating the product.
Moving right along to the growth stage, the hybrid approach.
Fast forward to month 18. Product market fit kicks in, your volume is growing, and suddenly those tiny API bills become a very, very real problem. This is where your strategy has to pivot. You really want to start reserving those expensive, frontier first-party APIs for your low-volume, premium tasks, the stuff that requires complex reasoning or really careful, customer-facing nuance. But for your high-volume bulk tasks, things like classification, simple extraction, or summarization, route those right over to open-weight inference providers. It's essentially a cheap workhorse pattern in action.
And let me show you why this matters so much. By simply offloading, say, 450,000 bulk requests to an inference provider like Together or Fireworks using an open-weight model, you can slash your monthly AI costs by roughly 85%. And that's without sacrificing quality. We are literally talking about taking a $3,000 monthly bill on a frontier model and dropping it to around $500 just by splitting the workload. It's a no-brainer.
But please hear me clearly on this next point. Resist the temptation to self-host at this growth stage. It's such a massive trap. Inference providers give you these incredible cost savings on a pay-per-token basis without forcing your engineers to manage GPU servers or handle on-call inference infrastructure. At this stage, your team's time is absolutely still best spent on the product itself.
All right, next section. Mature stage, multi-mode routing.
Now let's jump to year 3. Your product has massive scale, you've got enterprise customers, and real regulatory exposure. At this point, having single vendor risk is completely unacceptable. At this enterprise level, your architecture actually actively routes workloads across all 3 access modes based on very distinct operational needs. You still keep those first-party APIs for premium generation, you still have inference providers for bulk workloads, but now self-hosted open-weight models genuinely earn their place as the third leg of your architecture.
And strict data sovereignty and compliance are exactly why self-hosting finally earns that place in the stack. If you have healthcare, financial, or government clients, their contracts often strictly mandate that data absolutely cannot flow through a foreign API. So self-hosting on regional infrastructure becomes literally your only option to close those deals.
Which brings us to the 4 migration triggers.
So we know the stages, but how exactly do you know when it's time to graduate from one to the next? You need to know the signals. The bedrock of all this is cost projection. If we take a look at this 5-tier projection across 1K, 10K, 100K, 1M, and 10M requests, you can clearly see the mathematical crossover points. At 1K, first-party APIs win because GPU-based costs amortize terribly at low volume. But as we move toward 100K, first-party APIs lose dramatically to inference providers. And eventually, right around that 1 to 5 million mark, the utilization is so insanely high that self-hosting finally takes the crown. You absolutely must build this projection for your specific product today.
Beyond just cost, to avoid being caught off guard, you have to monitor 4 specific migration triggers that signal it is absolutely time to revisit your strategy. First is the cost crossover, which we just covered. Second is a sovereignty event, like when a new contract suddenly forces data residency. Third is capability divergence, meaning the underlying models have drifted. Maybe an open-weight model caught up to a closed one, completely removing the need to pay a premium. And finally, vendor risk materializing. If a provider suddenly jacks up their pricing or changes their terms of service out of nowhere, you need to be ready to move.
How do you actually catch these triggers in the wild? You capture them by establishing a rigorous 30 to 60-minute quarterly review discipline. Just sit down with your team and ask, what's our actual volume right now? Did any of our triggers fire? Doing this monthly is simply too noisy. Most signals won't move that fast. But yearly? Yearly means you're already 6 months too late, bleeding cash or losing out on contracts. Block out 60 minutes a quarter to review this and definitely put it in writing.
Finally, our last section, architecting for cheap migrations.
Knowing when to migrate is really only half the battle. If we know these triggers are inevitable, we need to write code today that makes tomorrow's migration painless and cheap. These 3 abstraction patterns are your ultimate playbook for exactly that. First, use an OpenAI-compatible interface. Almost all major inference providers support this shape now. If you code against this standard, switching providers is literally just changing a base URL and an API key. Super easy. Second, treat identity as config. And third, workload isolation, which just means each specific workload type has its own independent configuration to prevent a total system rewrite.
Let's look a bit closer at that second point, because it's a real game changer. Provider identity absolutely must be treated as pure data. Never, ever hard-code a string like Claude or Llama directly into your business logic. By treating the model identity as an environment variable or a database row, it allows you to just flip a config flag and swap models without rewriting a single line of business logic. It also makes A/B testing and gradual rollouts incredibly simple for your team.
Ultimately, AI operational discipline isn't about predicting the perfect model on day one. Nobody has a crystal ball. It's about architecting the flexibility to adapt when the inevitable triggers actually fire. The signals will come, the costs will cross over, the regulations will change. So take a hard look at your current code base and ask yourself, is your architecture genuinely prepared to survive month 18? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Now go out there and build those projections.